Hi, in this video I will be talking about activities and their life cycle. So what is an activity? Activity is a basic building block of any Android application that has a UI. So every Android application that you see on your device has at least one activity. All the activities in your application represent at least one screen. There can be multiple screens or views within the activities if you're using Fragment, but we'll talk about it later. Now, what does that mean on the code level? On the code level, activity is just a class provided by the Android framework, and every time we want to use it and every time we want to show something on the screen, we simply inherit from that activity. So you can see here our main activity is extending the app compat activity, and this activity is provided by the Android framework. Now don't be confused why it's called app compat activity and not activity. It's just an activity class that has backward compatibility, so it's always safe to use this one instead of class activity. You can use class activity as well. So if you, let's say, remove this, now every time you see an error you can hover over it. So let's say if I go here, so it says unresolved reference activity, and unresolved references usually occur when you are not importing that thing. So if you want to import this activity, you can click it, press Alt, Enter, and it will import it. And if you're on Mac, instead of Alt Enter, you will have Command Enter over there. But this is how you import any class. But for now, I will just switch back to app compat activity. And you can see that there is this one function that we are overriding that comes from app compat activity. And in order to understand this function, we first have to understand activity lifecycle. So let's talk a bit about what activity lifecycle is. Now, if you go to the activity page on the Android developer website, you will see this diagram explaining the activity lifecycle. So in order to easily understand it, I usually try to see activity as an abstract state machine. It's a machine that has certain states, and you as a user can perform certain actions based on what state the activity is in. An Android system provides certain callbacks for every state the activity can be in. These callbacks are described here in this diagram, and these callbacks are called activity lifecycle callbacks. So if we start from the top, you can see that when the activity is launched, we get a call in the Oncreate function. So this is the function where we do all the initialization stuff. We can define the layout of our activity. If we want to set some variables, we can do that as well. And if we want to do some initialization stuff based on the data from our database or from the backend web services, then we can do all that initialization work in Oncreate as well. Now after Oncreate, we get a call in the onStart function, and this happens when the activity is already created and it's about to be shown to the user. And after that, we get a call in onResume, and this is the point when the activity is shown to the user. So once the onResume is called, you can be sure that the user can interact with the activity. And in this part, now the activity is running normally and the user can interact with it. Now, if the activity for some reason loses the focus, we go to the onPause state. And this is when, let's say, something pops up on top of your activity, but your activity is still there. User can still see it in the background, but it's just not in focus. Then your activity can be in onPause state. And if the user, meanwhile, gets back to your activity, we move back to the onResume state and the activity starts running again. Now from onPause, if the activity is no longer visible, then we get a call in onStop. And this can happen for multiple reasons. Maybe the user has gone away from the activity. So if you are in one activity and you open another activity, then the previous activity is no longer visible. So onStop will get called. And another scenario could be that the Android system has killed your activity or your application. And that usually happens when system is running low on memory resources. So if Android system decides, like if the system is running low on memory, then the Android system can decide to kill your application process as well, in which case onStop will be called on your activity. And in this state, given that the application is not killed, by the Android system, if the user gets back to the activity, then basically on restart gets called and we get back to on start, on resume, and the activity gets resumed as well. Now, in case the application got killed by the Android process, when the user gets back to the activity, we actually call the Oncreate function again. Oncreate function gets called again. Now, after onStop, if the process is finished, let's say if like we moved away from the activity, we don't need the activity, the user has quit the application, that is the point when onDestroy gets called. And after this, the activity is shut down and now your application is closed. Now let's see how these callback functions look in the code. Now back in Android Studio, we can see that we have one of the callback function already implemented for this main activity. So this is the function that gets called when the activity is getting created. So here you can see that in this first line, we are just calling the Oncreate function of the parent class. And then this line is setting the layout for this main activity. So this set content view is the function that we use to set the layout for the activity. And this thing is basically referencing a layout in our resource file. So this R is short for resources, which you can see here. If you expand this, then we have layout over here. So this here. And then if you expand this, you can see our main activity, which is the main activity as well. So everything inside the resources folder are referenced this way. So let's say if somewhere down the line you want to reference something in the drawables folder, which is over here, you just write r.drawable dot something, whatever. But that is something that we will cover later on as well. Now, if you want to do something in the other callbacks, we can implement it here as well. So let's say if you start typing on pause, Android Studio should automatically give you the suggestions. And if you press enter, then we have this callback. Now, right now, this is grayed out because we are not really doing anything. If you hover over it, it shows you that that's a redundant override method because we are not really doing anything over here. So let's say if we do something like, let's say if we try logging something, then that warning goes away. And similarly, you can override other functions as well. Let's say if you want to override onStop, then you can override onStop as well and do your stuff over here. So that was it for this video. If you're a beginner Android developer, I know that it can be a bit confusing and overwhelming to remember all these lifecycle callbacks, but believe me, you don't really need to remember all these callbacks. There are just a couple of callbacks that are used more frequently than the other ones. And in case you forget something, you can always go to the Android developer page and look at the lifecycle callback diagrams. So this is it for this video. In the next video, I will create a simple button and then we'll see how we can open a new activity from this activity. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and I will see you in the next video.